First of all, fair disclosure, I want to welcome George Vollmer. George has been in the recruiting and talent management business for over 20 years. He just looks like he's 12. And George and I worked together for a number of years very closely at one of our prior companies. He's now with Alexander Mann. Alexander Mann, by the way, is a company that is about $1 billion in global sales in human resources and talent management solutions. They were the sponsors of this study. And I want to just frame it out, and then I'm going to let George present the results. Basically, this started as a conversation at breakfast. Okay, this actual research topic started as a breakfast conversation about an idea that the leadership at AMS had about going to the market with a recruiting solution that was based on business outcomes. All right. Now, the reason we have this at the CR conference is we've talked a lot about productivity, engagement, and workforce. And the premise is basically how do we tie the workforce in to business outcomes? All right, and that's a very hard thing to do. So the idea was to create a study about how the recruiting and workforce metrics tied into business outcomes. Fundamentally, what happened was we went through and looked at a lot of statistics, and it turns out the HR groups, many of whom you work with closely, didn't have all the resources they needed. So, we looked at the ones that said they did. And what we found was an amazing correlation, okay? George, why don't you go ahead and explain what we found and what actually you see as a correlation between the employee and the business outcomes.
Great, thanks Elliot. Good morning, everyone. My name is George Vollmer from Alexander Mann Solutions, talent management and talent acquisition companies across the globe. We have about 2,500 associates that really are looking at our customers' talent functions and how we can help them create a sustainable workforce. About a year ago, Alexander Mann went through its third private equity transaction in the fall of 2013. And one of the things that we saw was a good opportunity to take a step back and really take a step back and look at the next 5 to 10 year horizons and what were some of the big trends that were going to affect our customers, our employees, our shareholders, the candidates that were going through various processes with our customers. What were the big trends out there that were going to have an impact on our business? And we worked together and came up with these 11 trends that we feel will have the biggest impact for our business, for our customers over the next 5 to 10 years. And it was interesting when I was looking at these this morning, many of these align with some of the discussions that we've been having over the last couple of days. Specifically, I think what was interesting, demographics and attitudes to work, the discussions we had around gender and age differences and their impressions of an employer's reputation. But what we're going to talk about today is big data and analytics. So some fascinating information. 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years. I thought that was pretty startling. Only 6% of HR teams rate themselves excellent in data analysis and interpretation, and 56% rated themselves as poor. But to contrast that, executives are looking for this data. So 3/4 of the executives that were surveyed by Mercer have requested workforce analytics. So there's a big gap in expectations here, and really a big opportunity for big data to have an impact on the human capital management function. So as Elliot had mentioned, Alexander Mann Solutions in partnership with HRO today really asked the question, really how does talent and HR and analytics correlate to business success? So can we take this data and really help improve business performance and business outcomes? So we started on a journey last year and started talking to a number of executives. So we surveyed almost
good to see you.
400. Elliot, turn your mic off. We surveyed almost 400 HR and talent professionals into Q4 of last year. This was a global response across North America, EMEA, and Asia Pacific. It was across multiple industries and across companies of varying sizes, from small cap companies through to the Fortune 500. The areas of exploration were threefold. One, we wanted to see the time and effort that people were involved in data collection. How was the data understood and analyzed, and was it used internally? And how organizations leverage that data to drive changes in talent acquisition and therefore having a business impact. Some of the key questions that we wanted to see answered were, how can I help reduce unplanned attrition? How can I get more top performers into my business? How can I shrink time to productivity for staff as they get onboarded into the organization? And lastly, is this improving diversity and inclusion within the company? So we selected these four performance data metrics. First, because we knew that these were, in our opinion, the four that would have the biggest impact. And secondly, that most organizations would have a propensity to collect this data. So we looked at the efficiency and effectiveness of the talent function, looked at retention and promotion speed, looked at new hire impact, and then lastly looked at productivity and customer sat. And what we found was pretty startling. So, a vast majority, 91%, collect employee performance data, but only 51%, so a little over half, actually leverage the data that they're collecting to improve talent acquisition. And of the other half that don't collect the information, half of those had a desire to collect that information. The other half actually didn't see value in it. Second data point, almost 90% collected talent acquisition operations data. So this is data like time to fill, cost per hire, number of applicants flowing through the process. This is just basic talent metrics. But only 38% believe they used it effectively. So this was a combination of about 50-50 of companies that either collected the data and didn't use the data, or responded that they collected the data and that they didn't feel they used it effectively. And so what we did is we really took a deeper dive to really understand what did all of this mean. And not surprisingly, we found that organizations that collect this data and leverage this data to really look at how that can have business performance outcomes really outperform the competition. So 58% of the time, companies that collected the data and used the data to inform the process, 58% of the time they outperformed their competition. I'll talk to you in a second about what that means. And they outperformed them by almost 200%. So what we did is we took a random sampling of organizations that stated that they both used the data, collected the data and then used the data to inform the process. We then went out and looked at their top 3 competitors. And then using the Morningstar financial index, we looked at the financial performance of the trailing 3 years for those companies against their peers. So this data is, again, 3-year financial data for organizations that collect and use the data versus don't. So certainly we're not claiming causality, but certainly organizations that do this certainly have an edge over the competition. So some other benefits. So 30% of the organizations that did this had an 80% plus improvement on time to performance against organizations that did not. We saw almost 30% in increase, 80% plus in customer satisfaction, and 14% saw an 80+% in employee productivity. So what we also then wanted to do is we wanted to bring this to life and really look at a very specific example. So one of Alexander Mann Solutions' customers is a major apparel retail organization. They sell their products across the globe through various retail chains, but also through their own branded stores. And we've worked with them over the last couple of years, and some statistics that we're proud of is we were able to reduce time to hire from 66 to 26 days. certainly even more impressive was we were able to shrink the quick quits, so folks that left within 90 days. We reduced that by 60% since we've gone live. But where things got really interesting is when we started to look at business outcomes. So what we also found is that by having the right people who stay longer on time when they're needed, that the stores were able to see an almost 5% increase in their NPS ratings, which is their Net Promoter Scores, which essentially is, when I go into the store, is it helpful? So what they say is helpful in the fitting room. So we saw an almost 5% increase in that. And then secondly, we saw a significant improvement in conversion rates of customers, so customers coming into the store and purchasing something, but also the annual dollar per transaction. So within one store, the ADPT went up $3 per transaction. And you look at, there's almost 50,000 transactions a month, and this led to over $1.6 million in improved sales in that store alone. So when we look at a sustainable workforce, when we look at business metrics, when we look at trying to tie human capital management back to business performance, I think there's an opportunity to change the discussion around some of the metrics that are typically recorded and looked at around costs and time, and really starting to look at how are we in the human resources and the talent function being able to enable our business and to have a business impact. That's it. Thank you.